The hangar smelled of fuel, hot metal, and sweat. Soldiers moved like a restless tide, their boots striking the concrete floor in a rhythm only chaos could compose. Helicopter blades roared in the background, rattling the corrugated steel walls, drowning out the bark of orders. A dust storm whipped through the open doors, blinding for seconds at a time. The air tasted of urgency, because urgency was survival. Captain Marcus Hale slammed a folder onto the steel table in the center of the briefing room. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Listen up. We're down 2 pilots and command isn't sending replacements. If we don't have a bird in the air within the hour, Alpha Company is dead in the water. I don't care who, someone in this room needs to step up. Silence. The kind of silence that feels heavier than bullets. Around the table, 12 soldiers exchanged quick, sharp glances. Some clenched fists. Others stared at the floor. Every man there had his specialty: infantry, demolitions, comms. But piloting an Apache into the teeth of enemy fire wasn't just skill. It was madness. Marcus scanned their faces. Hardened men, each scarred by a dozen firefights. But their eyes said the same thing: not me. Not this time. And then, so quiet it nearly disappeared under the rumble of a departing Black Hawk, a voice answered. I can do it. Heads turned. It wasn't Sergeant Cole, the loudmouth Texan with a reputation for pulling impossible stunts. It wasn't Ramirez, who'd once hotwired a truck in the middle of a firefight and driven it straight through an enemy barricade. It was Private First Class Dana Keene. The quiet one. The one who never raised her voice above a whisper. The one who always volunteered for night guard duty so others could sleep. The one who, up until this moment, most of them thought had been misplaced into a combat unit by some clerical screw-up. Marcus blinked. Repeat that, Private? Her jaw tightened. I said I can do it, sir. I can fly. Cole scoffed, leaning back in his chair. What is this amateur hour? You ever touched a stick in combat, Keene? This ain't Microsoft Flight Sim. Ramirez smirked, shaking his head. She's bluffing. No way command sticks a real pilot in grunt boots. Dana didn't flinch. Her voice remained calm, but her knuckles whitened where her hands gripped the table. I trained rotary before I was transferred. 200 logged hours. Apache and Kiowa. It wasn't on my record because of complications. The room rippled with mutters. Complications in Army speak usually meant disciplinary trouble. Or something worse. Marcus studied her for a long-waited beat. His instinct screamed against it, throwing a soldier into the cockpit without a full background check, without confirmation from command, without proof, but time was bleeding away. An Alpha Company was trapped. Keene, he said, his voice cold steel, if you're lying to me and you take that bird up, you'll kill more than yourself. You'll get 30 men shredded alive on the ground. You understand the weight of that? Her brown eyes met his, unwavering. Yes, sir. Cole muttered under his breath. God help us. The mission briefing. Marcus slammed his palm on the map spread across the table. Alpha Company is pinned here, Rashid Valley. Last transmission says they've got hostiles closing from 3 sides. If we don't clear that valley, they'll be wiped. We send 1 bird in, guns hot. No backup. You keep those bastards' heads down long enough for Alpha to move. That's it. That's the mission. Cole raised an eyebrow. 1 bird? Into a hornet's nest? You better write our obituaries now. Marcus ignored him. He pointed at Dana. You fly. Ramirez, Cole, you're on her crew. You've got the guns. Keep her alive. Cole threw his arms up. Unbelievable. I'm gonna die in a tin can with Private Mystery Girl at the controls. Ramirez grinned. Hey, if she kills us, at least it'll be an interesting story. Dana said nothing. She just nodded, as if the decision had been carved in stone long before this moment. Into the fire. The Apache's engines screamed to life. The ground shook beneath its weight, dust clouds curling around its landing skids. Dana sat in the pilot's seat, her fingers brushing across the controls with a touch both reverent and confident. The headset crackled. Marcus's voice cut in. Keene. If you screw this up, don't bother landing. Understood. Her reply was soft but steady. Understood, sir. Cole strapped in behind the gunner's controls, muttering prayers. Ramirez double-checked the Hellfire payload. The cockpit buzzed with warnings, lights flashing amber and red, but Dana's hands moved like she'd been born for this moment. Rotors at full. Engines green. Weapons armed. Her voice was clinical, almost detached. And then, with a violent surge, the bird lifted into the storm. Rashid Valley. They crested the ridge and the valley exploded into view, a nightmare painted in fire and smoke. Alpha Company's position was a half-collapsed mud compound at the valley's center. Tracer fire ripped through the air, cutting across the darkness like neon rain. RPGs arced from the hillsides. Men screamed into radios, their voices drowned in static. "Jesus Christ," Ramirez whispered. "They're surrounded." Cole's hands hovered over the 30mm cannon controls. "Tell me where to shoot, boss." Dana's eyes locked onto the hillside. Her voice didn't rise, didn't waver. "Left ridge first. 3 RPG teams. Firing lane at 20 degrees. Cole squeezed the trigger. The cannon roared, spitting shells that tore the ridge into splinters and fire. Bodies flew. The RPGs died in a spray of dust. But the right hillside lit up immediately, return fire hammering the Apache's armor. The cockpit shook. Alarms screamed. "Taking heavy fire." Ramirez shouted. Dana pulled hard on the stick, and the Apache rolled, banking so sharp Cole's helmet smacked against the glass. Tracers whizzed past inches from the cockpit. "Goddamn it, Keen!" Cole roared. "You trying to get us killed?" But Dana's voice stayed calm. "Hold tight. Watch the ridge." She dropped altitude suddenly, so suddenly Ramirez cursed and braced for impact, then skimmed the valley floor, weaving through tracer fire like a thread through a needle. Cole's jaw went slack. "Holy hell, she's good." "Targets ahead," Dana said. "Light 'em up." The cannon thundered again. Rockets followed, streaking into enemy positions and erupting into mushrooming fireballs. For a moment, just a moment, the tide shifted. Alpha Company broke from cover, sprinting through smoke toward safer ground. The cost. But victory always demanded blood. The warning tone shrieked, "Lock undetected. RPG incoming." Ramirez screamed. Dana yanked the bird sideways, but the blast caught them across the tail. The world spun. Alarms howled. The Apache bucked like a wounded animal. "Tail rotors gone." Dana shouted. "Brace." The ground rushed up. The cockpit slammed, metal screeching, glass shattering. Pain exploded across every nerve. For a long, terrible moment, there was only fire and ringing silence. In the wreck, smoke filled her lungs. Dana coughed, vision swimming. Cole's curses cut through the haze. Ramirez was dragging himself free, blood soaking his sleeve. We're down," Cole panted. Birds cooked. Dana staggered out, gripping the side of the wreck for balance. Enemy fire still ripped across the valley. Alpha Company was falling back, but without air cover they wouldn't make it. Marcus's voice crackled faintly in her headset, broken by static. "Status Keen?" "Report." Her throat burned. She looked at Cole, at Ramirez, at the flaming ruin of their helicopter. And she made a decision. "We're still in the fight," she said. Cole's eyes widened. "The hell we are. We're stuck in the middle of..." But Dana had already slung her rifle, checked the magazine, and started running toward Alpha's position. She wasn't done yet. The fire from the wrecked Apache painted the valley in flickering orange, a beacon for every hostile eye. Bullets cracked overhead, spitting dirt and stone where they struck. Dana Keen ducked low, her rifle pressed against her chest as she stumbled forward, lungs burning from smoke and adrenaline. Cole staggered behind her, face bloodied, muttering curses that barely masked his fear. Ramirez limped on his injured arm, his rifle dangling from the other, eyes wide and alert. "This is insane," Cole shouted over the gunfire. "We're 3 people with rifles against a goddamn valley full of insurgents." Dana didn't slow. "Alpha Company is still moving. If they fall, so do we." "That wasn't the deal," Cole barked. "The deal was you fly, we shoot. Now the birds toast and we're alive." Dana cut him off sharply. "And as long as we're alive, we fight." Cole opened his mouth to argue, but Ramirez grabbed his shoulder. "She's right. We move or we're target practice." The push toward Alpha. They moved in bursts, short sprints, dive into cover, return fire, repeat. Dana kept low, her eyes scanning every ridge and shadow. She wasn't the strongest or the loudest soldier in the platoon, but she had something Cole lacked, focus sharp enough to cut steel. She spotted the flicker of a muzzle flash high on the ridge. Without hesitation she braced, fired 3 controlled bursts and the gunner toppled backward. Cole blinked at her, stunned. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" "Rotary school wasn't the only training I had." Her tone was clipped, flat, leaving no room for questions. Ramirez grinned despite the chaos. "Remind me never to play poker against you." They pressed on, weaving through smoke and gunfire, until they caught sight of Alpha Company ahead. About 20 men remained, clustered behind the shell of a stone compound. Their commander, Captain Voss, waved frantically when he saw the trio break from the wreck. "Over here," Voss bellowed. Dana and her team slid into cover, bullets hammering the stone walls. Voss's face was streaked with soot and blood, his helmet askew. "Who the hell are you three?" he demanded. "Crash survivors," Cole panted. "Your air support." Voss's expression twisted into bitter humor. "Air support, huh? You look more like walking body bags." Dana ignored the jab. "What's your situation?" "Pinned," Voss snapped. "Two squads cut off to the north, no comms with HQ. If we don't break this encirclement, we're dead before sunrise." "Options?" Dana asked. "None worth betting on," Voss muttered. Then his eyes narrowed. "Unless you've got an ace up your sleeve." The plan. The valley floor stretched wide and unforgiving. Insurgents dug into the ridges with overlapping fields of fire. Pulling Alpha Company out meant punching a hole through the noose, and holding it long enough for the men to escape. Dana studied the map Voss thrust into her hands, illuminated by the shaky red glow of a flashlight. Her mind ticked through possibilities, discarding most as suicide. Then her finger landed on a narrow ravine cutting toward the west ridge. "This gap," she said. "It's tight, but if we push through with suppressive fire, we can funnel the company out. Once they're clear, we collapse back and cover their retreat." Cole scoffed. "That ravine's a death trap." Ramirez leaned in, studying the map. "Unless we make it their death trap. Plant charges along the ridge. Collapse the slope as they chase us." Dana nodded. "Exactly." Voss hesitated, torn between the suicidal risk and the certainty of annihilation if they stayed. Finally he slammed the map shut. "Fine. We'll move on your signal. But if this fails, I'll personally haunt you in the afterlife, Private." The breakout. The night exploded when they moved. Dana led the charge, rifle barking, her boots pounding across dirt soaked in firelight. Cole laid down a wall of suppressive fire, cursing every time his weapon overheated. Ramirez darted to the ridge, planting demo charges with one good arm. Alpha Company followed, a ragged line of exhausted soldiers, their eyes wild with desperation. Bullets rained down from the ridges. Men screamed, some falling, others dragging them along. Dana's voice cut through the chaos. "Keep moving. Don't stop." They hit the ravine's mouth, a narrow cut through jagged rock. The enemy swarmed behind, shouting in a language Dana barely understood but knew meant only one thing: kill them all. Ramirez slapped the last charge in place and sprinted back. "Ready to blow." "Wait until they're closer," Dana shouted. Cole fired until his rifle clicked dry. "Closer? They're already kissing our asses." The insurgents surged into the ravine, shadows darting between muzzle flashes. Dana gritted her teeth, waited until she could see their faces in the firelight, then yelled, "Do it." Ramirez hit the detonator. The earth screamed. Fire and stone erupted, a wave of rock collapsing onto the charging enemy. Dust and screams filled the air. The ravine shook like the planet itself was dying. When the smoke cleared, the path behind them was blocked by rubble and silence. Cole exhaled in disbelief. "Holy, it actually worked." Ramirez grinned, bloodied teeth flashing. "Of course it worked. I'm a goddamn artist." But Dana didn't smile. She scanned the horizon, her gut telling her this wasn't over. Not even close. A bitter victory. They regrouped in a shallow canyon, Alpha Company reduced to barely 15 men. Voss leaned against a boulder, his chest heaving. "We made it out," he muttered as if trying to convince himself. "We actually made it out." But the cost was carved into every exhausted face. Men were missing. Blood trailed the ground. And in the distance the valley still burned. Cole collapsed onto the dirt, ripping his helmet off. "That was the dumbest, craziest plan I've ever been part of. And I've been part of some really dumb plans." Ramirez chuckled weakly, then winced at the pain in his arm. "Worked though. Admit it, you're impressed." Cole glared at Dana. "What I am is alive. Against all odds. And for some reason, I have her to thank." Dana sat apart from them, her rifle across her knees, eyes fixed on the flames rising from Rashid Valley. For a long moment she said nothing. Then quietly, "We're not safe yet. They'll regroup. They'll hunt us." Voss nodded grimly. "She's right. Command doesn't even know we're out here. We need extraction. And until then we keep moving." He pointed west. "There's an old comms outpost 10 clicks out. Abandoned, but if the equipment's functional, we can get a signal through." Cole groaned. 10 clicks, injured, no bird, no backup. Sounds like a vacation. "Move out," Voss ordered. The march was agony. Every step dragged like iron weights. The wounded slowed them, but leaving them behind wasn't an option. Cole and Ramirez carried one man between them, cursing but refusing to drop him. Dana walked point, scanning the horizon. Her thoughts churned. Every decision she had made tonight had carried lives in its balance. And for the first time she felt the crushing weight of it. She remembered Marcus's warning before the mission. If you screw this up, don't bother landing. Well, she hadn't landed. She'd crashed. And yet somehow they were still moving. Still breathing. Still fighting. She wondered if Marcus would call that success, or failure. Contact. Halfway to the outpost, the night split open again. Gunfire from the ridges. Ambush. Down? Dana shouted. Bullets tore the air. 2 men fell instantly, their cries cut short. Alpha Company scrambled for cover among the rocks. Tracers lit the sky, a deadly aurora. Survivors from the ravine, Voss snarled. Persistent bastards. Cole fired wildly into the dark. We can't hold this. Too many. Dana's mind raced. Retreat meant slaughter. Staying meant annihilation. Then her eyes caught a shadow, a narrow path snaking up the ridge behind them. Ramirez, she shouted. Can you climb with that arm? Like hell I can. You'll have to. Plant charges above them. Collapse the ridge onto their position. Cole gaped at her. That again? You're turning demolition into a hobby. But Ramirez was already moving, teeth clenched, hauling himself up the rocks. Cover him. Dana barked. They unleashed hell, rifles spitting fire, keeping the insurgents pinned long enough for Ramirez to reach the top. With shaking hands he set the charges. Ready? He screamed. Blow it. The explosion was smaller this time, but enough. Rock slides thundered down the slope, burying the ambushers in a cascade of dirt and stone. The gunfire ceased. Silence returned, broken only by ragged breathing. Cole slumped against a rock, eyes wide. Keen, remind me again why the hell you're just a private? Dana didn't answer. The outpost. They reached the outpost just before dawn, a crumbling tower of concrete and rust, half swallowed by sand and neglect. The door hung loose on broken hinges. Inside, dust and cobwebs coated old comms equipment. Voss shoved Ramirez toward a chair. Get me a signal. Anything. Ramirez cracked his knuckles. With one arm? Piece of cake. Cole sank into the corner, muttering. If the enemy doesn't kill us, tetanus from this dump will. Dana paced, restless. The silence felt wrong. Too easy. Too quiet. Her instinct screamed, they'll come. And as the first light of dawn crept over the desert, movement appeared on the horizon, silhouettes against the rising sun. Dozens of them. The outpost stank of rust, mold, and despair. Cracks split its concrete walls like old battle scars, and the desert wind whistled through shattered windows. Inside, the survivors of Alpha Company sprawled in exhaustion, their bodies broken but their rifles clutched tight. Dawn's light bled across the horizon, revealing the shadows of an army forming against them. Dozens of insurgents, maybe more, silhouettes crawling across the dunes, preparing to crush the outpost like wolves circling wounded prey. Private Dana Keene crouched near the entrance, her rifle balanced across her knees, eyes scanning the distant shapes. Every muscle in her body screamed fatigue, but her mind was ice. We can't run. Not anymore. Behind her, Captain Voss barked at Ramirez, who was elbow-deep in the ancient comms console. Status? Voss demanded. Ramirez gritted his teeth, sweat streaking through the dirt on his face. Half these wires are older than my grandma, sir. I can maybe get short range, but don't expect miracles. Miracles are exactly what we need, Voss growled. Cole slumped against a wall, reloading magazines with jerky movements. His helmet was off, revealing his blood-matted hair. We're screwed. You know that, right? Outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded. All we're doing here is waiting to die. Dana didn't even look at him. If you've given up, then put the rifle down and save us the noise. Cole's head snapped toward her, eyes blazing. You think you've got all the answers, don't you, Keene? You fly one bird, crash it, pull a couple of stunts, and suddenly you're leading the goddamn war. Better than whining in a corner, Dana said flatly. Say that again. Cole surged to his feet, but Voss cut him off with a roar. Enough. You two want to kill each other, do it after we survive. Until then, shut up and shoot straight. Silence hung for a moment, broken only by the static hiss of Ramirez's equipment. Preparing for the storm. The men spread through the outpost, reinforcing what little cover they had. Sandbags were dragged into doorways, broken metal turned into barricades. The wounded were settled in the darkest corners, their faces pale with pain. Dana checked her rifle, then moved from station to station, quietly correcting firing positions. You'll want a better angle here. Don't waste shots. Conserve ammo. Some soldiers bristled at her calm authority, but others found it grounding. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was steady, and in the chaos of the night before, steadiness had become rare currency. Ramirez swore as sparks spat from the console. Signal's trash. Best I can do is bounce off local towers, maybe reach command if they're listening. But it'll take time. How much time? Dana asked. He glanced at her, his face grim. An hour. Maybe 2. Her eyes flicked back to the horizon. The insurgents were advancing now, their shouts carrying on the wind, rifles raised, banners snapping. You've got 30 minutes, she said. The first wave. The assault came sudden and furious. Mortars whistled through the air and slammed into the sand outside, spraying shrapnel. Bullets hammered the walls, punching holes in the old concrete. The outpost shook under the barrage. Hold fire. Voss bellowed. Wait until they're closer. Dana gripped her rifle, her breath steady despite the thunder around her. The first silhouettes broke cover, sprinting toward the outpost. Now, she shouted. The room erupted. Rifles cracked, machine guns rattled, muzzle flashes strobing in the gloom. Insurgents fell in the sand, cut down mid-stride, but more pushed forward, screaming war cries. Cole fired until his barrel smoked. Too many, he yelled. Keep shooting. Dana ordered, her voice cutting through the din. She dropped one target, shifted, dropped another, her movements precise and efficient. The first wave broke against their defense, bodies littering the sand, but Dana knew it was only the beginning. Between waves. When the gunfire eased, the survivors sagged against the walls, panting, ears ringing. Smoke drifted through the shattered windows, stinging eyes and throats. Cole spat blood onto the floor. That was just the warm-up. They're testing us. Voss crouched beside the comms console, glaring at Ramirez. Tell me you've got something. Ramirez shook his head, frustration etched in every line of his face. Still working. I need more time. Dana wiped grime from her cheek, scanning the room. The men were fraying, fear in their eyes, exhaustion in their bones. If they broke now, it was over. She stood, rifle slung over her shoulder, and raised her voice just enough to carry. They think we're cornered. They think we're scared. But every inch of this outpost is ours. Every bullet we fire makes them bleed. And if command gets our signal, reinforcements will come. All we have to do is hold. 30 minutes, 60 at most. We hold and we live. The room quieted. Soldiers exchanged glances. Some straightened their backs. Cole muttered, "You sound like you believe it." Dana met his gaze. "I do. And so should you." The sniper duel. The second wave didn't rush. It crawled. Insurgents dug in around the outpost, sniping from dunes and ridges. Bullets punched through cracks in the walls, forcing the soldiers to crouch lower and lower. One man raised his head for a split second, and dropped with a hole in his skull. Panic rippled through the survivors. "They've got us pinned," someone shouted. Dana's jaw tightened. She snatched the long rifle from the fallen soldier's hands and slid into position near a broken window. "Cover me," she ordered. Cole blinked. "You serious? You're not a sniper." She didn't answer. Her eye pressed to the scope, breath slow and steady. She scanned the horizon, dust, smoke, shadows. Then she saw it, a glint of glass. Her fingers squeezed. The rifle cracked. A second later, a body tumbled from the dune. The men gasped. Dana chambered another round, eyes cold. "That's one. Find me the next." For the next 10 minutes, the fight became a duel of patience and precision. Every time a sniper revealed himself, Dana's shot followed. 3 went down. 4. The pressure eased just enough for the soldiers to breathe again. When she finally lowered the rifle, Cole stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Who the hell are you, Keen?" Her answer was simple. "A soldier. Same as you." The breach. The third wave hit harder. RPGs slammed into the outpost, collapsing part of the north wall. Insurgents poured through the breach, screaming, rifles blazing. Close quarters combat erupted. The air filled with smoke, blood, and chaos. Men grappled, stabbed, fired point blank. The wounded screamed. Cole fought like a madman, swinging his rifle like a club when it jammed. Ramirez, one arm useless, still managed to fire with the other. Dana moved like a shadow, every shot deliberate, every step measured. One insurgent charged her, blade raised. She sidestepped, slammed her rifle butt into his jaw and finished him with a single shot. But they kept coming. Too many. Fall back. Voss roared. To the second room. They retreated, dragging the wounded, slamming makeshift barricades into place. The outpost shrank around them, every room turning into a last stand. Ramirez's signal. In the chaos, Ramirez screamed from the console. "I've got it. I've got a signal." Voss stumbled toward him. "Get command on the line." The console crackled, spitting static. Then, "This is command. Identify." Ramirez nearly sobbed with relief. Alpha Company survivors, Rashid Valley Outpost, under heavy assault. Request immediate air support and evac. Static. Then the reply, acknowledged. Hold your position. Reinforcements inbound. 1 hour. The room went still. An hour. Dana's heart pounded. 1 hour might as well have been forever. Voss clenched his fists. You heard them. We hold this ground for 60 minutes no matter what it costs. The final push of Part 3. The insurgents regrouped outside. Their shouts rose like a storm, drums beating, banners waving. They weren't just attacking now. They were coming to finish it. Dana reloaded her rifle with calm, deliberate movements. Sweat dripped down her neck, but her eyes were steady. She knew the truth. This hour would decide everything. She glanced at Cole and Ramirez. Despite their exhaustion, despite the wounds, they nodded back at her. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The insurgents surged. The outpost shook. Bullets ripped through the walls. And Dana whispered, almost too soft to hear. Hold. The desert night was alive with movement. The base that had once seemed secure now felt like a fortress surrounded by wolves. Alarms had gone quiet, leaving only the hum of distant rotors and the crunch of boots on gravel. Riley sat in the ready room with her flight helmet on her lap, listening to the mission brief being delivered in the clipped, steady voice of Major Carver. We've confirmed a concentration of enemy forces here, here, and here, he said, tapping red circles onto the digital map projected on the wall. IED teams, mortar positions, and at least 2 technicals fitted with heavy machine guns. Intel suggests a convoy is forming. If they reach the ridgeline, they'll cut supply routes to our FOBs. Our job is to stop them. Tonight. Riley's stomach twisted, not with fear this time, but with anticipation. This was no training run. This was combat at its rawest. She looked across the room at Rodriguez and Michaels, her new wingmen. They'd already started referring to her as Bluebird, a nickname that had caught on after her first solo sortie. She wasn't sure if they meant it as a compliment or a jab, but she carried it with quiet pride. Carver's eyes swept the room. This isn't a hammer and anvil. It's harassment. We don't give them a chance to dig in. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they can set up a trap. Questions? Silence. Just the kind of silence that meant no one wanted to ask what was on everyone's mind. How many of us aren't coming back? Launch. The helicopters thundered to life, sending clouds of dust swirling across the tarmac. Riley climbed into the cockpit of her Apache, strapping in with hands that trembled only slightly. The crew chief slapped the side of the fuselage, signaling all clear. Beside her, her gunner, Warrant Officer Casey, adjusted his headset. Bluebird, you ready to rattle their cages? He asked, voice carrying that calm, unfazed tone only seasoned flyers had. Born ready, Riley said, though she wasn't sure if her voice convinced even herself. The Apaches lifted off in formation, blades cutting into the desert air. Below them, the base lights shrank until the world was swallowed by shadow. The only illumination came from the faint glow of their instrument panels and the distant twinkle of starlight. Riley gripped the cyclic. She thought about her family back home, her father's lectures, her mother's hesitant smile when she shipped out, her younger brother's joking salute at the airport. They'd never imagined me here in this seat, heading into fire. Contact. Bluebird flight, eyes up. Convoy spotted. Bearing 145 clicks out, Carver's voice crackled over comms. 2 technicals in lead, about a dozen vehicles total. Through her night vision, Riley caught sight of the convoy creeping across the desert floor like a steel centipede. The glow of engines shimmered against the sand. It was almost beautiful, until she reminded herself every one of those vehicles carried men who would gladly kill her and her team without hesitation. Targets locked, Casey confirmed. We've got first strike. Riley's pulse spiked. She eased the helicopter lower, steadying her aim. Her finger hovered over the weapon's trigger. Bluebird 1, you are cleared hot, Carver ordered. Riley squeezed. The Apache's rocket screamed into the night, streaking down into the convoy. Explosions lit up the desert like a thunderstorm, flames rolling across the sand. One of the technicals erupted in fire, its machine gunner hurled into the air like a rag doll. Shouts echoed over the enemy's radios, panicked and chaotic. "They're scattering," Rodriguez yelled over comms. "Punch and Bluebird?" "Roger that," Riley replied, banking hard as Casey unleashed the chain gun. Bullets chewed through canvas trucks, shredding them apart. A second technical tried to swing its weapon skyward, but Riley dipped, sliding into its blind spot, and Casey's rounds ripped it apart before it could fire. For a moment, Riley felt invincible. Every decision, every movement was flowing. This was what she had trained for. This was where she belonged. The ambush. Then it all went wrong. "Bluebird 2, I've got tracers, left ridge," Michael shouted. From the darkness, streaks of orange fire lanced upward. Heavy caliber rounds cracked the night air, slamming into the helicopter's armor. Riley's machine shook under the impact, alarms blaring. "Ambush? RPG teams multiple." Carver barked. Before Riley could react, a rocket whooshed past, missing her tail rotor by feet. Another slammed into Rodriguez's bird. The explosion lit the sky as his Apache spun out of control, a flaming pinwheel crashing into the sand below. "Rodriguez is down." "Repeat, Bluebird 3 is down," Michaels cried. "Hold formation," Carver shouted. But his voice couldn't mask the fury beneath it. Riley's throat clenched. She had flown beside Rodriguez just hours ago, joked with him in the ready room. Now he was gone just like that. Another RPG streaked toward her. She yanked the cyclic, the blast rocking her as shrapnel pinged against the armor. Casey cursed. "We can't stay here. They've got us bracketed." Riley forced her voice steady. "Carver, we need to move or we're next." "Negative," Carver snapped. "We hold until reinforcements arrive." Riley hesitated. She understood the logic. Keep pressure on the convoy, deny them time to regroup. But sitting still was suicide. Every second in the kill zone was another chance for the enemy to land a hit. She had a decision: obey orders or trust her instincts. She banked hard, breaking formation. "Casey, hang on." "Bluebird, where the hell are you going?" Carver roared. "Getting us out alive." Riley shot back, pulling low behind a ridge. RPG slammed into the rocks above, harmless now. She leveled out, breathing hard, knowing she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The counterattack. Safe for the moment, Riley's eyes darted back to the burning wreck where Rodriguez's Apache had gone down. She knew in her gut, no one survived that crash. Anger flared hot in her chest. She couldn't let it end like this. Rodriguez's death had to mean something. "Casey, mark those RPG nests," she said, voice steel. "Already did. Coordinates locked." "Good. Time to pay them back." Riley swung wide, bringing her bird around behind the ridge. With the element of surprise restored, Casey unleashed hell. Chain gunfire and rockets tore into the ambush sites. Men scattered, bodies flung into the sand. Riley's eyes narrowed, focused, detached. She wasn't the quiet farm girl anymore. She was a soldier, a weapon. Michael's voice broke over comms. "Bluebird 1, you're clear to rejoin. Reinforcements inbound. We've got them on the run." Riley exhaled, tension finally cracking. The convoy below was nothing but fire and twisted metal now, the desert lit with orange flames. The enemy was broken. But the cost hung heavy in the air. Aftermath. Back at base, Riley sat in the debriefing room, helmet still in her lap. Carver stood at the front, jaw tight, eyes cold. "You disobeyed a direct order tonight," he said flatly. "You broke formation." Riley met his glare. "If I hadn't, we'd both be dead." "Sir." The room went still. For a moment, Carver looked like he might explode. Then, with visible effort, he drew a slow breath. "You're alive. And you did wipe out those nests." His tone softened just slightly. "But this isn't a one-woman show, Lieutenant. Next time, you better be damn sure your instincts are worth the risk." Riley swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." The debrief ended, but the weight didn't lift. Later, in her quarters, she sat on her cot, staring at the floor. She could still see Rodriguez's helicopter spinning, still hear Michael's voice cracking over the radio. Casey poked his head in. "You did good out there," he said gently. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Riley managed a weak smile. "Doesn't feel like it." "War never does." He leaned against the doorframe. "You'll carry Rodriguez with you. That's the job. But you're still here. And we need you." She nodded, though the guilt still burned. A quiet moment. Later that night, Riley walked to the edge of the base, where the desert stretched endlessly under the stars. She tilted her head back, letting the silence wash over her. Somewhere far beyond this sky, her family was asleep, unaware of the night she'd just survived. A small laugh escaped her, bitter and dry. "They needed a combat pilot," she whispered. "And I said yes. God help me." The wind carried her words into the dark. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Another mission, another loss, another test of her instincts. But she did know this: she wasn't running anymore. She had chosen this path and there was no turning back. The desert night remained silent, but in the quiet, Riley found a strange, fragile peace. The morning after the ambush, the desert base looked unchanged on the surface. Trucks rumbled across the perimeter, soldiers hustled to and from mess halls, and helicopters lifted off in clouds of dust. But for Riley the air was heavier. Every step she took seemed to echo with the memory of Rodriguez's fiery crash. When she walked into the briefing room, conversations dipped. Soldiers glanced at her, then away. Some expressions held respect, others suspicion. She could almost hear the unspoken words: "She broke orders. She lived. You didn't?" Carver stood at the front, arms crossed, waiting for the room to fill. His eyes flicked over Riley, then moved on. No rebuke, no acknowledgement. Just silence. The briefing. "All right, listen up," Carver said, voice flat. "Last night's strike disrupted their convoy, but intel shows they're reorganizing. If they consolidate, they'll regain strength. Command wants us to finish the job." He tapped the digital map, new red circles glowing across the terrain. "These caves here," he zoomed in, revealing jagged ridges and rocky gullies, "are their fallback position. Supply caches, ammo depots, heavy weapons. Think of it as a hornet's nest. Our mission is to smoke it out." A low murmur rippled through the room. Everyone knew what that meant: high risk, close quarters, no easy exits. "This is a joint op," Carver continued. "Apaches provide cover for ground assault teams. We'll be coordinating with Delta. Expect heavy resistance." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "Questions?" Silence. "Good. Wheels up at 1900. He dismissed them with a curt nod. As soldiers filed out, Michaels caught Riley's arm. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jaw tight. "Don't think I've forgiven you," he said, voice low. "Rodriguez followed orders. You didn't. Guess which one of you is still breathing?" Riley flinched. She wanted to argue, to tell him she'd saved lives, but the words stuck. All she could manage was a quiet, "I'm sorry." Michael shook his head, pulled away, and was gone. The weight of command. That afternoon, Riley sat in the hangar, running her hand along the side of her Apache. The machine was scarred from the ambush, scratches and dents from shrapnel, but still stood solid, a beast built for survival. Casey appeared beside her, coffee in hand. "Heard Michael's lit into you." "Yeah," Riley muttered. "He's grieving. Don't take it personal." "I should have done more," Riley said. "I should have." Casey cut her off. "You did what you had to. You made a call. Carver might not like it, but you're still here and so am I. That's leadership, Riley. Not every leader's popular." She glanced at him, surprised. "Leadership." He smirked. "Like it or not, people are watching you now. You've got the guts to break a bad order. That scares some folks. Inspires others." Riley fell silent. The idea of being seen as a leader unsettled her. She wasn't sure she wanted that responsibility. But maybe it wasn't about what she wanted. Deployment. Night fell quick, as if the sun was eager to flee. By 1900, Riley and Casey were strapped into the Apache, rotors thundering overhead. The convoy of Humvees and Raps rolled out below, headlights cutting through the dark. "Bluebird flight, this is Delta lead," came a voice over comms. Deep, steady, professional. "Stay tight. We'll breach the caves at 0100. "Copy, Delta," Carver replied. Apaches on station. They soared over the desert, shadows against the moonlight. Riley's NVG lenses painted the world in eerie green, endless sand, broken ridges, the faint glow of heat signatures clustered in the target zone. "Targets confirmed," Casey said. "Movement at cave entrance. Guard teams." "Roger." Carver's voice was calm, measured. "Bluebird 1, take the left flank. Bluebird 4, cover the convoy. Lieutenant Riley, you're with me on Overwatch." The assignment stung. Overwatch meant less action, more eyes on. Maybe Carver was keeping her on a short leash after last night. "Copy," Riley said tightly. "First strike." Delta's ground teams reached the ridgeline under cover of darkness. Then, like lightning, the fight began. "Contact front." Delta lead barked. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes strobing the caves. The Apache swooped low, chain guns opening up. Sand and rock exploded as rounds chewed into the enemy positions. Riley tracked a group of fighters breaking from cover, aiming RPGs at Delta's vehicles. KC 1 o'clock. Got him. He squeezed the trigger, shredding them before they could fire. Bluebird 1, cave mouth sealed? Carver asked. Negative, Riley reported. They're pouring out. Reinforcements. Delta lead cut in. Requesting airstrike, cave entrance. We're getting pinned. Copy that, Carver said. Bluebird 2 rockets on the cave. Michael's Apache swooped in, unleashing a salvo. Explosions thundered, collapsing part of the entrance. Smoke and dust billowed, choking the battlefield. For a moment it looked like they had momentum. Then the ambush hit. The trap. From the ridges above, hidden positions lit up with withering fire. Machine guns and RPGs rained down, catching Delta in a crossfire. Son of a bitch, they knew we were coming. Delta lead roared. Bluebird flight, suppress those ridges. Carver ordered. Riley dove, chain gun spitting. Casey called targets, each one bursting into chaos under their fire. But the enemy was dug in, disciplined. For every nest they silenced, 2 more lit up. Convoys taking losses. Michael shouted. We're not holding this. Riley's heart pounded. She saw Delta's vehicles burning, soldiers scrambling for cover, wounded dragging themselves across the sand. Carver, we need to pull back, she yelled. Negative, Carver snapped. We press. That's an order. Riley froze. The words felt like déjà vu, another bad order. And this time lives were bleeding out by the second. Casey's voice cut through her hesitation. Riley, if we don't clear those ridges, Delta's done. She clenched her jaw. She had to choose, obey Carver and grind forward or act on instinct again. Breaking point. Her decision crystallized in an instant. Casey, lock Hellfires on the north ridge. Full strike. Confirmed. Firing. Missiles streaked from the Apache, slamming into the hillside. The explosions shook the desert, collapsing the ridgeline in a cascade of rock and fire. Enemy guns went silent in a thunderous roar. Bluebird 2, hold your fire. Carver shouted. That wasn't. But his words were drowned by Delta lead's relieved voice. Beautiful strike. Ridge neutralized. We're pushing forward. The tide shifted. With the ambush broken, Delta surged, breaching the caves. Gunfire echoed inside, then muffled detonations as charges destroyed caches of weapons and supplies. Within minutes, the enemy broke, scattering into the desert night. Objective secure, Delta lead reported. Good work, Bluebird. Fallout. Back at base, the air buzzed with mixed energy, relief, exhaustion, and anger. Soldiers cheered the mission's success, but Carver's fury was unmistakable. In the command tent, he stood inches from Riley, fists clenched. You disobeyed me again, Lieutenant? Do you even understand the chain of command? Riley held his gaze. I understand it just fine. I also understand that if I hadn't acted, Delta would be dead. We would have lost the op. You don't get to make that call. Carver roared. Not in my unit. The tent fell silent. Casey shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak. Finally, Carver's voice dropped, low and dangerous. You've got guts, Riley. I'll give you that. But guts don't win wars, discipline does. You're on thin ice. One more stunt and you're done. He stormed out, leaving the air heavy. Recognition. Later, Riley sat alone outside the hangar, staring at the stars. Her nerves buzzed, exhaustion clawing at her bones. A shadow approached, Delta lead. Up close, he was broad-shouldered, grizzled, eyes sharp as glass. You're Riley? He asked. She nodded. You saved my men tonight. That strike broke their backs. He paused, studying her. Carver's pissed, huh? Yeah. Delta lead smirked. Commanders like him hate wild cards. But soldiers like mine? We remember who kept us alive. You've earned respect tonight. Don't forget that. Riley blinked, surprised by the weight of his words. Thanks. He tipped his head. Keep your edge, Bluebird. Just don't let it cut your own throat. Then he was gone. The quiet after. That night, Riley lay in her bunk, unable to sleep. Her body was drained, but her mind raced. Carver's anger, Michael's grief, Delta lead's praise, it all clashed inside her. She thought of Rodriguez again. Would he have approved of her choices? Or would he have followed Carver to the end, no matter the cost? Sleep finally came, heavy and restless. She dreamed of fire streaking the sky, of voices calling her name from the smoke. When she woke, the base was already stirring, rumors of the next mission whispering on the air. The war wasn't slowing. The choices wouldn't get easier. And deep down Riley knew, her story was only beginning. The desert sun was merciless, baking the base in shimmering waves of heat. Riley sat outside the operations tent, helmet at her feet, sweat soaking her undershirt. She should have been sleeping, but her name had been called on the loudspeaker an hour earlier. Lieutenant Riley, report to command. The words had hit harder than enemy fire. She rose slowly, like she was marching to her own execution, and stepped into the tent. Inside the air was cooler but heavier. Around a table sat Major Carver, a full-bird colonel flown in from higher command, and 2 officers she didn't recognize. Their uniforms were crisp, their faces unreadable. Lieutenant Riley, the colonel said, voice measured. Take a seat. She obeyed, her stomach tightening. The interrogation. The colonel clasped his hands. You've shown initiative. Twice you've broken orders. Twice your actions arguably saved lives. But disobedience undermines the very foundation of military command. Carver leaned forward, his jaw tense. With respect, sir, her recklessness nearly cost us the mission. She's a liability. Riley met his glare, forcing herself to stay calm. With respect, sir, if I hadn't acted, Delta would have been wiped out. Rodriguez's death taught me something. Hesitation kills. Orders aren't infallible. The room went still. One of the unknown officers scribbled notes. The colonel's eyes narrowed. You understand what you're saying, Lieutenant? That you believe your judgment outweighs your commanding officers? Riley swallowed. Not always. But in those moments? Yes. Carver slammed his fist on the table. This is exactly the problem. She thinks she's some kind of lone wolf. The colonel cut him off with a sharp gesture. Enough. We'll deliberate. He turned to Riley. You're dismissed. She rose, saluted stiffly, and walked out, heart pounding. Isolation. Back in the barracks, Riley felt the eyes on her. Some soldiers nodded with respect. Others whispered behind her back. The divide was growing, and she stood squarely in the middle of it. Michaels cornered her near the mess hall. His face was still raw with anger. What happens when your little hero act gets someone else killed? You gonna shrug and say instinct again? Riley clenched her fists. I didn't want Rodriguez to die. I don't want anyone to die. But standing still while the enemy cuts us apart? That's not leadership, it's suicide. You don't get it, Michaels hissed. Orders keep us alive. Without them it's chaos. And chaos kills more than the enemy ever will. Before Riley could respond, Casey stepped in between them. That's enough. We're all on the same side. Save it for the fight. Michaels shoved past and stalked away, muttering curses. Riley exhaled shakily. Thanks. Casey gave her a long look. You've got enemies now, Riley. Not just out there, he jerked his chin toward the desert, but in here. Watch your back. The new mission. That evening, the colonel returned with his decision. Lieutenant Riley, he said, standing before the assembled squadron, your actions were insubordinate. But the battlefield results speak for themselves. For now, you will remain on active duty. Consider this your final chance. One more breach of protocol and you'll be grounded. Permanently. Carver's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. The colonel continued. You'll have an opportunity to prove yourself immediately. Intelligence confirms a high-value target, enemy commander Raheem Dartsey. He's directing operations from deep in the canyon system 50 miles east. Taking him out could cripple their offensive. But it's a fortress. Anti-aircraft guns, layered defenses. This will be the most dangerous mission yet. He paused, scanning the room. Riley, your lead. Shock rippled through the soldiers. Carver stiffened, visibly biting back protest. Riley's breath caught. What? After everything? Yes, sir, she said, voice steady. Preparation. In the hangar, Riley inspected her Apache with meticulous care. This time, there was no room for hesitation. Casey climbed in beside her. Target like Dartsey? He won't run. We'll have to dig him out. Yeah, Riley murmured. And Carver will be watching for me to slip. Casey smirked. Then don't slip. Later, Riley gathered her small strike team, Michaels, Carver, and 2 others. She laid out the plan on a rough sand map. Canyon's too tight for a frontal assault, she explained. We'll split. Michaels, you'll draw fire from the southern ridge. Carver, you cover Delta's advance. Casey and I will thread the canyon, find Dartsey, and cut off his retreat. Fast and clean. Michaels scoffed. So we're your decoys now? Riley met his glare. You want to kill Darcy or not? This is how we do it. Carver's silence was colder than words. But he didn't argue. Into the canyon. Night cloaked the desert as the Apaches thundered toward the canyon. Riley's hands were steady on the controls, but her pulse thrummed. Bluebird flight check-in, she said. 1 standing by, Carver answered. 2 in position, Michael said, clipped. 3 and 4 ready, came the others. All right, Riley breathed. Let's make history. They split as planned. Tracers immediately lit up Michael's position, enemy gunners unleashing fire from the ridges. Explosions echoed as Carver's rockets slammed into defensive nests. Riley dove into the canyon, walls towering on either side. It was like threading a needle at 200 knots. Casey called targets, chain gun tearing into guard posts hidden in the rocks. Multiple heat signatures ahead, Casey warned. Darcy's got a small army down here. Then we cut through. The canyon blazed with fire as the Apache roared forward, unleashing everything it had. Enemy trucks exploded, fighters scattered. But Riley's eyes were locked on a command tent tucked against the canyon wall. That's him, Casey said. Darcy's in there. Face of the enemy. As Riley lined up her rockets, a barrage of anti-aircraft fire erupted from concealed guns. The Apache shuddered violently, alarms screaming. Missile lock. Break, break, break. Casey yelled. Riley yanked the cyclic, the helicopter skimming dangerously close to the canyon wall. The missile whooshed past, detonating behind them. Darcy's got teeth, Casey muttered. Riley gritted her teeth. Not enough. She swung wide, then dove rocket screaming. The command tent vanished in a fireball. Bodies scattered, dust choking the canyon. But amid the chaos, one figure staggered free, limping but alive. Darcy. There. Casey shouted. Riley's chain gun tracked him, finger tight on the trigger. Then she froze. Through her NVGs, she saw Darcy shove a young boy aside, shielding him from the chaos. A child. Her breath caught. What the hell was a child doing here? Riley, fire. Casey barked. She hesitated. Darcy disappeared into a tunnel, swallowed by darkness. Aftermath. Target escaped, Casey said bitterly as they pulled out of the canyon. Back at base, Carver stormed into the hangar. You had him. You had Darcy in your sights, and you let him go. Riley's chest burned. There was a child. I wasn't going to risk hitting him. Carver's eyes blazed. That child will grow up with blood on his hands, thanks to your hesitation. You've doomed us all. Michaels, standing nearby, muttered, Unbelievable. Riley snapped. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to let him go? Her voice cracked raw. I've killed plenty already. But if I start mowing down kids just to hit my target, then I'm no better than them. Silence. Harsh, suffocating silence. Carver finally said, voice like ice, You're finished. Alone. That night, Riley sat alone outside the wire, staring at the endless desert. The war stretched on, unyielding, uncaring. She had saved lives. She had killed enemies. She had disobeyed twice. And now she had hesitated, because of a child. Her instincts had guided her before, but now? Now she questioned everything. Casey found her there, sitting in the sand. He didn't speak at first. Just sat beside her, letting the silence breathe. Finally he said, You saw something worth saving. That's not weakness. That's humanity. Riley didn't answer. She just stared at the horizon, where the first hints of dawn began to glow. The war wasn't over. Darcy was still alive. And she knew deep down that her fight was only beginning. The night over Al Rafa burned like a furnace. Not from the desert heat, but from the sheer chaos of war. Artillery thundered miles away, tracer rounds split the sky like comets, and plumes of smoke coiled upward from shattered buildings. Captain Emily Carson sat strapped into the cockpit of her Apache, sweat beading under her helmet despite the cooling systems, eyes locked on the mission feed displayed across her HUD.